Welcome back to Mzansi Best Brands. Today we explore Chevy, one of the most nostalgic players in South Africa's motor landscape. From its early days to its niche existence, let's uncover how Chevrolet became a loved international brand. Chevrolet, colloquially referred to as Chevy, is an American automobile division of the manufacturer General Motors, or GM. The Chevrolet 2500, 3800 and 4100 series were launched in 1972 in South Africa. They were in fact locally produced versions of the Opel Record D coupled with engines provided by Chevrolet. This series was South Africa's #1 seller in 1975, although it dropped to third the next year and all the way to 15th in 1977. Chevrolet was part of the Chevrolet division of General Motors, which was started in the USA in 1911. After many mergers and reverse mergers with General Motors, Alfred Sloan decided to rebrand the Chevrolet with his Maxima car for every person purpose. And as a result, this brand became Ford's fiercest competitor in the USA market. Eventually, Chevy was the volume leader in General Motors and overtook Ford sales by 1929 to become the best-selling brand in the USA. In 1917, Chevrolet combined with GM. In 2002, GM acquired the recently bankrupt and former Daewoo Motors Company of South Korea, and in 2011, the brand was folded into Chevy, making the global market except for Austria. Chevrolet branded models were sold all over the world, and General Motors Daewoo in Korea remarketed their Daewoo models with the tagline, "Daewoo has grown up enough to become Chevrolet," and in the process managed to build a global brand again. In 2013, General Motors announced that they would be withdrawing all but 3 of their models from the European market in 2016. But it will still be a brand name that will remain very visible in South Africa. Louis Chevrolet, Arthur Chevrolet, and ousted General Motors founder William C. Durant started the company on November 3, 1911, as the Chevrolet Motor Car Company. Durant used the Chevrolet Motor Car Company to acquire a controlling stake in General Motors, with a reverse merger occurring on May 2, 1918, and propelled himself back to the GM presidency. After Durant's second ousting in 1919, Alfred Sloan picked the Chevrolet brand to become the volume leader in the General Motors family, selling mainstream vehicles to compete with Henry Ford's Model T in 1919, and overtaking Ford as the best-selling car in the United States by 1929 with the Chevrolet International. Chevy started using their bow tie logo in 1913. It could have maybe come from a wallpaper that Chevrolet saw in a hotel. It could also be a version of the cross on the Swiss flag, due to Chevrolet having been born in Switzerland. In 1917, Chevrolet combined with GM. In 2002, GM acquired the recently bankrupt and former Daewoo Motors Company of South Korea. And in 2011, the brand was folded into Chevy, making the global market except for Austria. Founded in 1913, General Motors South Africa, or GMSA, initially distributed Chevrolet vehicles before beginning to manufacture and distribute vehicles of all of GM's brands in 1926 with the Series AA. By the 1960s, this included the British Vauxhall marque and the Ranger, which was marketed as South Africa's own car. By the 1970s, larger South African Chevrolets were based on Australian General Motors Holden's models. The Commander was based on the Holden Kingswood, and the Constantia on the Statesman, while the smaller Forenza was based on the Vauxhall Viva. The Chevrolet Nomad sold in South Africa was entirely different from the Nomad sold in the United States, whereas the American Nomad was originally conceived as a station wagon version of the Corvette, and eventually became the station wagon version of the Bel Air. The South African Nomad was an SUV of truck proportions before SUVs were popular. Due to local content laws, the cars usually received different engines than in their home markets. In South Africa, Chevrolet was GM's main brand name until 1982, with a number of Vauxhall Motors and Holden derivatives being built under the Chevy name from 1965. In the 1970s, the advertising jingle Braai Vleis, Rugby, Sunny skies and Chevrolet, adapted from the US baseball, hot dogs, apple pies and Chevrolet, came to epitomize the ideal lifestyle of white male South Africans. Originally, Chevrolets were CKD kits of US models assembled in their plant in Port Elizabeth. However, since South Africa was right-hand drive and the US was left-hand drive, along with encouragement by the South African government to use local content, Chevrolets such as the Biscayne were eventually made entirely in South Africa, along with GM's own car for South Africa, the Ranger. In 1986, it was sold off and rebranded the Delta Motor Corporation as a result of the passage of the Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act in the United States and subsequent divestment of General Motors from apartheid South Africa. Delta continued to use the Opel, Isuzu and Suzuki brands under license from GM, as well as pay for the supply of assembly kits. Following the transition to democracy in the 1990s, GM acquired a 49% stake in the company in 1997, and in 2004 the company once again became a wholly owned subsidiary of General Motors, reverting to its original name. Chevrolet branded vehicles are sold in most automotive markets worldwide. However, due to the changes to the political climate in the 1990s, GM decided to re-enter South Africa, eventually buying out the whole of Delta. In 2001, the Chevrolet name made a comeback, used on the Lumina, a rebadged Holden Commodore, and later on the Daewoo range of cars. Current Chevrolets, as of 2013, include the Spark Light, a rebadged Daewoo Matiz, Spark, a third-generation Matiz based on the 2007 Chevrolet Beat, Aveo sedan and hatch, the Sonic sedan and hatch, which is the second-generation Aveo Cruise sedan and hatch, underpinned by the front-wheel drive GM Delta II platform, the Lumina sedan, including the Ute model, the Chevrolet Orlando, a 5-door, 7-seat compact MPV manufactured by GM Korea under the Chevrolet division for worldwide markets, the Chevrolet Captiva, a mid-size sport utility vehicle developed by GM Daewoo, now GM Korea, the South Korean subsidiary of General Motors, and sold under the Chevrolet brand, the Chevrolet Trailblazer, a mid-size sport utility vehicle produced by the Chevrolet division of American automaker General Motors and based on a pickup truck chassis, in this case the 2012 Chevrolet Colorado, and a pickup version which was previously based on the Opel Corsa known as the Corsa Ute. But the current model, which in collaboration with GM Brazil, who developed it, is the Chevrolet Utility, which is based on the Chevrolet Aguila platform, a vehicle developed in Brazil and built in Argentina. Unlike many other international car brands, Chevy models continue to exist in the country through the many partnerships and licenses. This is Mzansi Best Brands, where we bring you the stories behind the brands you love. Join us again in our next episode as we dive into the history of your much-loved brands and how they've made their mark here in Mzansi. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of Mzansi Best Brands. Time will tell.